Hello again. Now, 15 people are known to have died in a cholera outbreak in Hammanskraal in Tshwane here in Gauteng, while 60 others have now been hospitalized. This has raised concerns about hygiene and sanitation in the area. The Water and Sanitation Department has dispatched technical teams to respond to this outbreak. Professor Anthony Turton from the University of the Free State Centre for Environmental Management joins us now just to unpack this situation a little bit further. Prof, good afternoon. Welcome to today, and thank you very much for your time this afternoon. I would have thought wastewater management is a pretty straightforward issue. But listening to what people are commenting about since this cholera outbreak that's now killed 15 people in Hammanskraal, it's like there's a wastewater plant in the area which has not been properly looked after for decades.
Good afternoon to you and the listeners. And firstly, my deepest sympathy to the family and friends of those people that have lost their lives as a result of this tragedy. Let's not forget this is a human tragedy playing out at local level, but it's got national significance. I draw your attention to the fact that the very first environmental law ever passed in South Africa was passed by a gentleman by the name of Jan van Riebeck back in the day. And he passed the law known as Plakkaat 13, or Decree number 13. And that decree was quite simple. It said you are not allowed to defecate upstream of your drinking water. That's what it said. That was Plakkaat 13. Do not defecate upstream of your drinking water. So we can argue that our oldest law in the country deals with exactly what we're seeing play out around us today, and we obviously haven't learned the lesson because we've got almost 1,000 sewage plants in South Africa, 1,000 wastewater plus minus 1,000 wastewater treatment works, and something like 60% of them are dysfunctional in some way or other. Some of them totally, utterly dysfunctional. So we discharge about 5 billion litres of waste every single day into our rivers, and only a small portion of that is treated to a level that is safe. So frankly, it's quite amazing that we've managed to dodge the bullet as long as we have dodged the bullet, because it's a well-known fact in scientific circles that when you have got raw sewage going into water that ultimately becomes drinking water, and passing through a plant that is not necessarily designed to treat sewage into potable drinking water, then you have got a ticking time bomb on your hands. So it's as simple as that. We have to fix up our wastewater treatment works. It's not rocket science at all.
I wonder why we're seemingly battling with it. I mean, in December, we had beaches closed in Durban because of sewage spills. We had beaches closed in Cape Town because of sewage spillage. Now we've got people dying from consuming one of the most precious liquids in life in Hammanskraal. How big is the problem, Prof?
Well, the problem is a national problem. Well, you've just mentioned now, it's manifest in almost every city. In fact, not only the cities, all the small towns as well across the country. We can go from the very, very well-run cities, places like Cape Town that are allegedly well-run. Well, even they've got their sewage problems. So it is a universal problem in South Africa, but it gets very, very bad in some places. Places like KZN is really bad. Free State generally quite bad. There's certain provinces that are just worse than the rest. But in general, it is an onboard problem, and it comes down to the simple fact that wastewater is managed at municipal level, and unfortunately, we've lost so many skills in the water sector that the plant that has been built 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago is still limping along now, but it's reached the end of its life and it's about to die. So that's it. As long as we are discharging untreated sewage back into drinking water, then this is going to happen. And unfortunately, the cholera is just really the tip of the iceberg, because there are many, many other pathogenic organisms that are far worse than cholera. But I don't want to frighten people about those things. But the cholera is the sort of let's call it the less dangerous of them all. There are others that are really, really bad things that are out there in the drinking water.
Yeah, that's troubling to hear. So Hammanskraal could just be one incident that we might face more over the near future. What should be done besides as you said, employing the requisite skills in the wastewater treatment plants. What else should be done to prevent such disasters?
Yes, there's a long-term fix and there's a short-term fix. So let's quickly deal with the long-term fix. The Minister of Water Affairs is busy building teams all across the country now. He's reached out to all kinds of specialists. He reached out to me last week. His office reached out to me. So there's a concerted attempt being made by the Minister right now to rebuild the core skills needed. So let's support that. And that's a long-term thing. That's not going to happen, overnight. We've got to, it's an uphill battle. But let's put our shoulder to the wheel and let's make that happen. In the short term, we must go back to the kind of things that our grandmothers taught us. Wash your hands before you eat food or prepare food. Prepare food using clean containers. If you have to store water, store it in clean containers. Wash your hands after you go to the bathroom. Things like that, fundamental hygiene, that is really of great importance now. And particularly where people congregate together, so in places like schools, when places like, wherever there will be a social congregation, this is the important thing. And of course, if water is coming from any outdoor source or any rural source that might be contaminated, for example, people drawing water from a river, this is absolutely dangerous because, without any question of doubt, we can almost say that all of our rivers are contaminated in some way or other. And I mean, some of the figures that are coming out are just off the charts in terms of coliform forming units, CFUs, is the measure that we use. These things are in the millions of coliform forming units per unit per volume of water. That's completely literally off the scale. So it's a nationwide problem. But just let's go back to the things that our grandmother taught us: basic fundamental hygiene. This is what we have to practice now.
You mentioned something earlier, Prof. You said it's at the municipal level where wastewater treatment should be taking place. But we know that many of our municipalities are dysfunctional. But one would have expected much different or better from the capital of the Republic. I mean, Hammanskraal is in Tshwane, which is Pretoria. It's the capital city.
I sense your outrage, and I, as an analyst, I don't want to express an outrage myself. But what I can say, as an analyst, is I see people's anger growing across the country, for this very matter. And when lives are now at risk, people have got the right to be angry. But let us go, just take one arm's length away from what we're talking about now, and let us examine what's happening at the leadership level of places like Pretoria, like Tshwane, like Johannesburg, like your various big cities in the country, where there's infighting, and squabbling amongst the political parties about who's going to be the mayor and who's going to be in charge of what committee and what allocation of resources. This is not in the collective best interest of society. So, how can we expect municipalities to get sorted out when they can't even form a stable local government by forming a stable coalition? And unfortunately, we are just in a very, very volatile time now in South Africa politically, because the ruling party seems to be losing traction, and therefore we have entered into the scenario of coalition politics, and we know that that's very, very fraught. The coalitions generally are quite unstable. So how can we realistically expect technical decisions to be made within that milieu where there is just such weak and such fractured leadership? So I would like to call upon all parties to depoliticize this. Let's depoliticize. Let's make this thing a technical issue, not a political issue. And that's why the ministers attempt to bring these teams together. Let's try and just focus on delivering services to the people, to save lives, and to try and stabilize the ship that's otherwise sinking on a daily basis.
Yeah, otherwise you'll move from this water crisis to another one, and other crises. Last question, Prof. You said Minister Senzo Mchunu, the Minister of Water and Sanitation, is trying to reach out to as many people as possible in accessing skills, which is a long-term game. And you are one of those who's been consulted by the Minister. What did you tell the Minister?
Well, I offered the minister my full support, and I said to him that now is not the time to squabble over finger pointing, of blame. This is not the right time. That time will come sometime in the future. The day of reckoning will come eventually. But I think at the moment, when you've got a fire on board your ship and your ship is sinking at the same time, the last thing you want to do is fight with the captain of the ship. So we must give the minister our full support, and I certainly have pledged my support, without aligning myself to any given political party. I try and remain non-political or apolitical. I'm a technical person. So, we need to build those technically competent teams, and more importantly, we have to start restoring confidence and trust. One of the biggest shortages in South Africa today is trust. We can't trust government, we can't trust each other, we can't trust the private sector. So trust is one of our shortest commodities at the moment. So let's rebuild trust, and from that trust we can start restoring the confidence of investors in our economy, so we can start growing jobs. And I mean, people are dying, as you said, because of they're picking up waterborne diseases, and all of that is completely unnecessary. So let's take a wake-up call and realize that really, this is a dire situation, because the water crisis is at least as bad as the Eskom crisis, and both of them are intractable problems, highly technical in nature, with wide-reaching consequences. So we have to apply our minds as to how to fix those two things up. And in fact, I'll go one step further to say that in all probability, we had to do a proper, intensive, in-depth root cause analysis of this crisis at Hammanskraal, you will probably find that one of the significant exacerbating factors underlying this whole thing is the persistent breakdown of the electricity supply. Because the breakdown of electricity supply disrupts the processes in your sewage works, it disrupts the pumping processes, and et cetera, and ultimately it leads to the breakdown of your water services. Yeah, so there's a definite connection between these things, and we must understand that.
Yeah, I was just thinking from what you've said, and some of these wastewater treatment plants in the municipalities that don't even have budgets, don't know how to manage their budgets, might not even afford a generator to try and keep them going. And Hammanskraal is today, there's a couple of other places with cholera today in Limpopo and the Free State. Some people might think, Hammanskraal is out there, north of Pretoria, not an issue. But it could be in the suburb one of these days where we face this water crisis. It could spread. Thank you for your time, Prof. That's Professor Anthony Turton from the University of the Free State Center for Environmental Management, one of those skilled South Africans who's been consulted by Minister Senzo Mchunu, the Minister of Water and Sanitation, recently as he's going around the country. That's Mr. Mchunu, Senzo Mchunu, trying to marshal all resources, all kinds of skills that are needed, very badly, sorely needed to deal with our water crisis, because you don't want this situation to escalate further and to, over time, get bigger than Hammanskraal, because that is possible. Put your politics aside in Tshwane, DA, EFF, ANC, whoever you are, Action SA, and sort out the problem of clean water for the citizens of Hammanskraal. After all, they voted for some of you in 2021. They deserve better.